I am pleading with LeBron James as a father. Stop this. Stop this. We all know that Bronny James is in the NBA because of his dad.
From the moment Bronny James's name appeared, he was never treated like a normal young player. From the beginning, he lived under unusual pressure. The reason is simple. He is the son of LeBron James, one of the greatest basketball players in history. That alone pushed him into the sports world, surrounded by expectations far beyond his age. This pressure intensified because of the media. Every small skill he showed in high school was turned into a viral clip, and every game, no matter how simple, was analyzed as if it were an NBA matchup. This created an exaggerated image of him before his real skill set had even fully developed. And even though Bronny put up solid numbers in high school, around 14 to 15 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, and 2.4 assists in his senior year, the media used those numbers to fuel unrealistic hype. In earlier seasons, he averaged closer to 8.8 points, 3.3 rebounds, and 2.8 assists, which are perfectly normal numbers for a developing player, but they were treated as signs of early greatness rather than steps in natural growth. Then came the comparisons to his father. People expected him to have the same power, drives, and dominance, even though he's a completely different type of player, defense first, high IQ, and team-oriented rather than a flashy scorer. But the comparison was always ready, making any average performance look like a disappointment. Even within the teams he played for, whether in high school or college, he never had the space to develop away from the spotlight. Every game felt watched. Every decision or mistake was magnified because people viewed him as a public figure, not a young player learning the game. Because of all these factors, his start wasn't fair. A player his age usually goes through normal development stages, but Bronny stepped into an environment with pressure levels closer to what veteran pros face. When he began playing at higher levels, many noticed his numbers were quiet and that his offensive impact wasn't strong. Some interpreted this as weakness, but the truth is much deeper. The first reason is his playstyle. Bronny is not a scorer or a ball-dominant player. He prefers passing, defending, and playing within the system. Those roles don't pop in the stat sheet. Players who attract attention are usually high scorers, while Bronny's contribution lies elsewhere. The second reason is the massive jump from high school to college and then to the NBA. It's faster, stronger, and more physical. This transition is tough for any young player, but people didn't give Bronny the patience they give others. 4.8 points. At USC, his averages, 2.8 rebounds, and 2.1 assists in about 19 minutes were typical for a freshman finding his place, not a player who failed. The third reason relates to his actual role. At USC, he wasn't given a major offensive responsibility. His role was defense-heavy, and his minutes were limited. The same happened when he entered the NBA. Early on with the Lakers, he averaged around 2 points, 0.7 rebounds, and 1.6 assists in just 6 to 7 minutes per game. Naturally, his numbers looked modest, as he wasn't being used as an offensive piece. On top of that, Bronny plays cautiously. He avoids risky shots and tough plays because he's still building confidence. This caution makes people think he's underperforming, but he's actually trying to avoid mistakes in a high-pressure environment. All these factors made his performance look modest, but modest doesn't mean bad. It simply means he isn't an offensive star yet. He still provides value that doesn't show up in statistics, defensive awareness, smart movement, and intelligent passing. In other words, Bronny didn't disappear. He just plays in a way that doesn't match the fantasy image people created around him. Was he rushed into the NBA? Bronny is still a developing player. His college career was extremely short. He didn't get enough time to build his offensive identity, yet he was moved into the NBA, the toughest league in the world. So the real question becomes, did coaches rush their evaluation of him? His numbers suggest he wasn't ready for a consistent NBA role, especially on a team like the Lakers. Many players require a transition period in the G League before taking the leap. And when Bronny actually got G League minutes, he looked noticeably better, even producing standout games when given freedom and touches. As for LeBron's role, that's where the controversy grows. LeBron's dream of playing with his son is understandable, but it added enormous pressure. It may have accelerated decisions that would normally be based strictly on development, not sentiment. Even the minutes Bronny got were in ultra-competitive environments against grown players with years of experience, making every mistake look bigger. In conclusion, Bronny may have been moved up a step too early, not because he's weak, but because he simply needs more time in the proper developmental environment before carrying the full weight of the NBA. Still, the path ahead is completely open. If he's managed correctly, with clear minutes, consistent development, or extended time in the G League, he can absolutely rebuild his trajectory and reach his real potential without pressure or rushing.
I don't know. I'm not going to speak for Stephen A. I'm only going to speak for myself. I think what he was really trying to say, hey, don't put that kid out there with them NBA grown men. Send him to the G League where he can get better as a player. You can interpret it any way you want, but like I say, they shouldn't have put him in that situation. He should have been in the G League.
As the debate surrounding Bronny James continued to grow, Stephen A. Smith's voice gradually became not just prominent, but central to the overall narrative. His commentary shaped how much of the public interpreted Bronny's early NBA experience. What began as questions about readiness slowly evolved into a recurring framework: that Bronny entered the league too early, and that his presence with the Los Angeles Lakers could not be separated from the influence and legacy of his father, LeBron James. On the surface, this argument resonates with many fans. Basketball culture is deeply rooted in merit, progression, and earned opportunity. When viewed strictly through box scores and on-court production, Bronny James did not appear ready for a stable role on a team with championship expectations. His offensive output was limited, his minutes were inconsistent, and his impact often required closer observation rather than immediate recognition. From that narrow lens, skepticism seems reasonable. However, the deeper issue with Stephen A.'s criticism lies not in questioning readiness, but in how that question was framed, repeated, and amplified. His commentary consistently positioned Bronny not as a young player in development, but as a case that needed justification. This subtle shift in framing transformed a developmental discussion into a legitimacy debate. Stephen A. frequently implied that Bronny's opportunity was exceptional in a negative sense, something granted rather than grown into. By emphasizing emotional influence and legacy, the narrative moved away from basketball context and into moral judgment. The underlying suggestion was not simply that Bronny needed time, but that his presence itself required explanation. That distinction matters. NBA history offers countless examples of players who entered the league unfinished. Many rookies arrive with undefined roles, limited confidence, and minimal offensive responsibility. The difference is that most of those players develop away from the spotlight. They struggle privately, experiment freely, and make mistakes without their entire trajectory being publicly debated. Bronny James, by contrast, has been developing in real time, under constant national scrutiny. One of the most critical shortcomings in Stephen A.'s approach is the failure to clearly separate individual performance from situational context. Bronny was never placed in a position designed for production. His usage rate was low, his minutes were brief, and his responsibilities leaned heavily toward defensive awareness, off-ball movement, and system discipline. These are not glamorous roles, especially for a teenager competing against physically mature professionals. Yet much of the critique implicitly treated him as if he were underachieving in a role he never occupied. The expectation became immediate validation, proof of worth compressed into a few possessions. In that environment, conservative decision-making can be misread as hesitation, and patience can be mistaken for a lack of confidence. What is often overlooked is that caution is a common survival mechanism for young players trying to earn trust, not a reflection of limited ability. Another layer of this issue lies in comparison. Stephen A.'s analysis often positioned Bronny against public expectations rather than realistic peer benchmarks. Instead of being evaluated alongside players of similar age, experience, and role, Bronny was measured against the image created by hype and legacy. This creates an impossible standard where normal development is reframed as failure and gradual growth is dismissed as inadequacy. There is also an internal contradiction worth noting. Stephen A. has long spoken about the importance of protecting young athletes from premature judgment and excessive pressure. He has criticized organizations and media outlets for rushing narratives and damaging confidence. Yet in Bronny's case, the repeated emphasis on not being ready are